Hi guys, go ahead and open up your Pear Deck for today. It's under T2 Week 2. The date was 10/27. The title is Solving for Y and Graphing Inequalities. If you click on that, you can click to join the Pear Deck, and it takes you directly to where you need to be. Okay, once in the Pear Deck, your slide 1 just told you that you were working on slide 2 and 3 as warm-up. Okay, so if you go to slide 2, okay, that is question 3 from our test. This problem is telling me to find the rate of change. Okay, remember guys, rate of change is just finding the slope. Okay, on this problem we would have to use y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, right? And I don't have a problem telling you what that formula is because it is on your star chart. Okay, so now we've got to go work on finding the points that we need, right? I like to use the first two. So if we label y1, y2, x1, x2, we go plug them into our formula. So 24 minus 10. Because I started with 24, I have to start with the 3 on the bottom. So 3 minus 1. So we get 14 on the top, divided by 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7. So the correct answer for that one was C. Okay, here's another rate of change problem. So slope again. y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. It does not hurt to write the formulas again. Okay, I'm picking the first two. This time I'm going to start with the 12. So 12 minus 3, the top, because those are my y's. Because I started with 12, I'm going to start with negative 2 on the bottom. So negative 2 minus 0. 12 minus 3 on the top gives me 9, divided by negative 2 minus 0 is a negative 2. If the top or the bottom are negative, it makes the whole fraction negative. So negative 9 over 2 is the correct answer, which is G. Okay, go ahead and get your journal so we can take some notes on solving for Y and graphing equations and inequalities. Okay, so the first thing we did was we drew a Venn diagram, right? And all a Venn diagram is a diagram that helps us compare two different things, right? So on the left-hand side, we wrote our equation, y equals 1/2 x minus 3. And then on the right-hand side, we wrote an inequality, y less than or equal to 1/2 x minus 3. Okay, and the first thing we did was put the similarities, the things that they had in common. Then we identified the two things that were different. And then there was one major difference between the two. So if we notice on both of them, my slope and my intercept are identical. So that was one of the things we noticed. Okay, and if we were to put both of these on a graph, they would both be a solid line because equations are solid, and then this one has the or equal to, the line underneath, that makes a solid line. Okay, the major difference between the two was that this one was an equation. It had an equal sign. And then this one was an inequality because it had an inequality symbol. The major difference between the two is that one of them will have shading and one of them will not. Okay, so I'm going to pause, set up my graphs. I'm going to put 5 lines on each side, on each axis, and then we're going to plot each of those. Okay, so if I start with my y-intercept, -3, I'm going to go to the -3 on my y-axis, and then my slope tells me how to move. I move based on rise over run. So I'm going to go up 1 time, to the right 2 times, and there's my new dot. And I'm going to repeat it to get more points, so that way I have a straighter line. Once those are connected, once those are done, we connect them with a straight line. Okay, inequality is the same process. So I'm starting at -3. I go up 1 to the right, up 1 to the right, up 1 to the right. And hopefully those look as identical as I want them to be. Okay, remember, it's a solid line with my inequality because it has the line underneath, or equal to, right? And then the next part would be our shading. So remember, this is when we use our inequality, okay, the one that they gave me from the problem. And I like to check the point 0, 0 because it's the easiest to locate. So if we plug 0, 0 into our inequality, we plug in a 0 for x and a 0 for y. So anywhere I see those 2 letters, I'm going to put a 0. So where y is, I'm plugging in a 0. Everything else is staying the same. Where I see an x, I put a 0. Okay, right here, this simplifies to be 0. So I'm left with 0 less than or equal to -3. So then we ask ourselves, is 0 less than -3? No, it's not, right? Is 0 equal to -3? No, it's not, right? So this is a false statement. Remember, if it's false, we shade away or on the other side of where 0, 0 is at. So I would shade everything on this bottom part here. Okay, so far we've been dealing with equations and inequalities that already start in slope-intercept form, right? So a linear equation or inequality, I'm not going to write the whole thing, needs to be in this form to graph. And the form that I'm talking about is slope-intercept, y equals mx plus b. And the reason being is because we get a slope and an intercept. So we have a starting point, and then we have a slope that tells me how to move to my next point, right? So if it does not start already like this, we've got to solve for x. I'm lying, we got to solve for y, sorry. Solve for y because we want it to be y equals, okay? So our first example, we're going to say 4x plus 2y is less than 8. Okay, and if you remember from before when we were solving, right, we only had one variable. This time we have 2, but we still do the same process, okay? So let's see. I like to say move x, divide by the number with y. So I like to say move and divide. When we move something, we do the opposite operation, right? So we do minus 4x on this side. Because this is just an 8 and it doesn't have an x, the negative 4x, sorry, is going to just become part of the problem now, right? So if I'm rewriting everything, I'm left with 2y on the left is less than 8 minus 4x. Okay? Now I got to divide. I'm dividing by whatever number is with the y. So I'm dividing by 2. On this side, we can write this one 2 different ways. We can either put the whole thing divided by 2, but then we have to still separate when we divide, right? So we're making 2 separate equations. Or if you wanted to, you can already separate at the beginning, divide by 2, because everything has to be divided by 2, okay? So either way you want to write it is fine with me. When we divide 8 divided by 2, we get a 4. When we divide -4 divided by 2, we get a -2. Don't forget your x. Now we are done. That is our final answer because from here I can identify my slope and I can identify my intercept. Okay, so my next example is 8x plus y less than 6. So remember, move and divide. So I got to move the x, so minus 8x. It's just a regular 6. It doesn't have an x, so it just becomes part of the problem, right? Okay, so bring down my y, less than 6 minus 8x. We divide. There's nothing to divide, so I'm done. I have my slope, I have my intercept, and I'd be able to graph from this point. Last example is 3x minus 6y greater than or equal to 6. I split up my problem. So remember our steps, move and divide. So I'm moving the x, minus 3x on both sides. I'm left with a negative 6y greater than or equal to 6 minus 3x. And then divide. So I'm dividing by the number that's with y. Divide by negative 6, divide by negative 6. This example, I separated it, okay? So I'm left with y. But guys, remember when we divide by a negative, my sign is going to flip directions. So when I'm done, it's going to be facing that way. 6 divided by negative 6 is a negative 1. Negative 3 divided by negative 6 will give me a positive 1/3 x. Once we have y by itself, we're done. I can identify what my slope is, and I can identify what my intercept is. So now you've got to go to your Pear Deck, finish the rest of your slides, and make sure you get it turned in.